everyone. Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. And today I am speaking with Shawn Durham. He is an actor, pitchman, improv artist, humorist, author, entrepreneur, and overall talented person. Today we're going to talk about chasing dreams and creating our own paths, especially breaking away from safe careers and doing unsafe things. I met Shawn when I was running the partnership marketing division at Geico. Shawn worked over in the communications department, which was right next door to my office. And you never really forget the way people make you feel. And Shawn always made me feel very important because he came to every single reception, event, or party I threw for years. He always showed up. I'd have to beg other people to come. I know part of it was because his job required it, but even when the job wasn't insisting that he needed to be there, he still came anyway. And so I always really appreciated that about you, Shawn.
You also made sure to have booze at all your events. So that helped. That helped a lot.
There was always all the events.
There was always a strong possibility that there'd be some drinking somewhere involved in the events, and that was cool. And also, you were in an idea factory, so you always tried to think outside the box. And
that's nice.
And you wanted to find things that were, for lack of a better word, interesting. So I was always on board with that. So yeah, you're cool.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I was trying to figure out when was the last time I saw you.
Well, it was pre-COVID. And I want to say 2018, late 2018, after my second surgery, spinal surgery. I've had 3 surgeries related to my left hand every 4 years. And I think my second one was in 2018. And I believe I saw you and the missus. Well, I shouldn't call him the missus. He wasn't like that. But you and your significant other half. I think sometime in 2018. So
okay,
early 2019.
Mm-hmm. Well, then if he was there, then we went to that whiskey bar that's right next to the White House in the Willard.
The Willard.
Yeah.
In the bowels of the Willard,
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, I got to say, I just love watching you soar. I mean, anytime you appear on the big screen, I always am stunned. I'm like, hold on, I know that guy. I know him. That's a real person. I'm
stunned too. Like, what? What am I doing there? Like, that's crazy. But it's always cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I remember when you left Geico, and you left during a time when people didn't leave. They didn't voluntarily leave Geico. I mean, it was sort of drilled into everyone's head, like, this is a stable job. This is where you need to be, and blah, blah, blah. And then you just ran off to chase your dreams. And I think that blew everyone away. It just was not a safe choice at all. It was the opposite of safe.
It was 100% unsafe. Here's something that will probably make your viewers and listeners even more crazy. I didn't have a plan of what those dreams were. I didn't know what those dreams were. I just knew I had the rest of my life. This is what I said to myself. I had the rest of my life to work a gig that simply pays the bills that I may not like or enjoy. There's plenty of jobs out there that can do that. So why don't I use this energy while I don't have many strings attached to me, no wife or kids or family that I'm directly responsible for? Why not jump without a safety net and figure that out on my own? And it's worked for me. You sink or swim when you do something like that, because I had no backup plan. I literally took a year off after leaving and just sort of sauntered the world. But it's just something I thought I had to do for my own sanity, because I had too much up in here and I wanted to see if there were ways to get that stuff out and still make money for it, different from what I was doing at Geico.
I mean, was there something that triggered that? Did you go to a funeral? Did you what made you say, I need to live my life? I can't be in this job day in and day out. There's nothing terrible happening, but I need to go live my life. I need to go do more. What happened?
Well, a couple of things happened. More importantly, my dad had passed away. He passed away in 2010. And I left Geico like 3 or 4 years later. In fact, my anniversary of turning in my resignation, I think, was this week.
8 years, right?
8 years. And it was crazy. People were like, well, were you just leaving? Where you going? What else do you have? Do you have a gig? No, I don't have anything. All right, see y'all. I'll be back after my break, and then blah blah blah. I had no backup plan, but my dad had passed away, and I had for about a year after that event. I think I was sort of on an artificial type of buoyancy, right? I was okay. I felt okay. I felt good. I'm like, okay, I can make this work. I can make that work. I thought I was handling everything, and then I just sort of felt, and a lot of people didn't realize it because I was still, I think myself, I sort of had an internal malaise about a bunch of things in my life, and I just said, one thing I can control is what I do from here on out, and I decided to leave. And what also gave me a nice signal post was I had my 10-year anniversary with the company coming up, and I wanted to meet that 10-year mark. There was something very Joe Durham about that. Like, all right, you want to make this mark before you leave. In fact, when my dad passed away, I remember I laid out the pages. I was internal communications. I laid out the pages for Jeannie at that time. And then I told people, hey, my dad just died. I need to go. And people didn't know that had happened. And I just wanted to finish that task. So I had my 10-year anniversary come up. And at the same time, what corresponded with that was, and not to get into politics, but Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the liberals on the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision and upheld the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So it's like, okay, if I leave, I at least will have some type of medical insurance.
Right. And that's what holds a lot of people to their jobs. They won't leave because of insurance. It's a trap.
Yes. And Deedre, the ironic thing is 4 months later after leaving Geico, I received a shooting pain down my left side and lost use of my left hand. And I needed 3 surgeries in the past, like in 4-year sequences, 2 in my spine, 1 from the front of my neck cut through there, 1 to the back of my neck cut through there. And recently I had a hand injury. And that's because I had health insurance. I could actually get those things done. Had I not left Geico when I did, I probably would still be a slave to Geico and their insurance and their benefits. So I'm very grateful for the timing of that, although my left hand weakness is still kind of a bummer. But it's amazing how the sequence of things work. Those were the big impetuses. So wanting to do something else, especially after my dad died, that sort of made me recalibrate my life. And the thing of saying, hey, well, you'll at least have something if you break your butt somewhere, you could be able to get taken care of. You get bandaged up. And so those are 2 very important things in my endeavor.
That's very important. So you still push through, and you're a writer, and to damage your hand, that's a very big deal. And I know you've written quite a bit, even through all of these surgeries. So how is it just because there's this fire in your belly and you need to communicate, you're going to get your word out there? I mean, what are you doing? Are you speaking to text? How are you getting your work out there?
Maybe for other writers it works, but for me, speaking to text, I couldn't do it. There's a muscularity that makes it feel like it's actually, there's a percussive action. How about these for words? There's a percussiveness to writing and banging out words on the keys. But it also sort of corresponds to, okay, people need to read this, right? If you talk, you can sort of just talk without structure. You can just be willy-nilly. You just keep on going. It's tough to write in the structure necessary for text. So I've written plays, I've written a book, written a couple of things. And while my hand was down, I would text myself because my thumbs still work. I would text things, long passages to myself, either through email or what have you, and shoot those out. And then I could always edit with my right hand with a little punch here, tap there. My left hand works enough for me to still do the percussiveness of writing. But in the early going, it was tough. I needed to feel the percussiveness of banging out the keys or something, the effort, because I don't find myself working as well when it comes to just top of the head stuff. So you just do it. You just do it.
Yeah. Wow. It really shows commitment, because other people would just give up. I mean, writing's hard enough as it is for a lot of people.
And then you wonder who's going to read this or who's going to digest this. These are just regular writer doubts, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have regular writer doubts and you don't have a 9-to-5, a regular way to make money, you have this temporary, in some regards, disability, you're impaired. what are you gonna do? And that leads me to how I became an actor. So I was down, I was out of work. I'd been a writer and I'd worked for a paycheck ever since college. So 18 years, right? Like
Mm,
double my age at the time, basically, when I left Geico. 18 years or so, I've always worked writing
mm-hmm.
in some kind of way. And then all of a sudden that was taken away from me, or I left the job and I couldn't do it anymore. So what do? I got into acting.
Mm-hmm.
And how did I get into acting? Well, I had written a book and I've scrubbed the book. There were some errors in it or whatever, but it's a
But hold
fun
on,
book. It's a great book.
see the title of your book
Well,
for
the
anyone
book
listening.
at the time then was called The Broke Brothers Revolution.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I've renovated it. I've scrubbed it up again. It's called Broke. There's
Okay.
the cover right there.
It looks like a
Broke.
shattered glass, shattered
Yes,
windshield.
yes.
Yes.
And the symbol for man right there, and that in the O. Yeah.
Where can people get that book if they want
People
to
can
find
get that book. It's best if you get it on my website at www.jsdinc.com.
Uh-huh.
You can order a personalized signed copy from me because I make more money when you buy the copies from me instead of from Amazon. So you can get it at Amazon, but yeah, go to my site. I'll sign you a copy. I'll ship it off to you.
Yeah, they take a chunk. Okay, no, yeah. So you had this book, and that's what led to acting?
As a writer, you think that if you write something, it's going to sink through people's heads, but people are visual. People need things told to them in bullet points, or in other words, slides or visual aids. So you can't sell a book. I mean, I self-wrote it, self-published it. I gotten into a couple of schools, actually, a couple of colleges actually used it as like an aid on their syllabuses.
That's awesome.
But I needed something visual to sort of propel this into any type of action moving forward. And so I raised some money and I launched a one-man show, and I played 4 characters based off the book, and broke some passages out into monologues and played them out. And I got some friends from Geico, notably Jose and Jeff. Shout out to them.
I love Jose and Jeff. They're fantastic.
Yeah, who helped me create the videos, produce the videos, and they were like little videos. And the way the show worked was a video would come down. You go to a theater, and there'll be a movie screen. A video screen will come down on the stage. It'll play this 2 to 3 minute video with the character as the focus and some other things going on in the video. And then the screen comes up, and I'm out there as a character. And I'm doing a John Leguizamo type of thing. And that happens 4 times. And that was my way of trying to sell the book with the one-man show. When I lost usage of my hand for those moments, well, I couldn't write anymore. So all I could do was try to act. And my only clips were from the one-man show that I had produced. That launched my acting career. Those were my reels, so to speak. Those were my clips. And I just went from place to place trying to get gigs, because the only thing I had were, this is really shallow, only thing I had were my looks. I just had surgery. I couldn't lift anything because I bust out stitches and I had nerve issues. So I couldn't do I couldn't do manual labor. I couldn't do any writing. I used to be a barista when I was working when I was in Durham, North Carolina. I couldn't do coffee jerk things. Couldn't do anything except try to look nice and act.
How did you work out? Because that's all you have at this moment in time. You got your looks. You have to keep the physique. How did you work out with this injury?
Well, you don't. So I got thinner. When I don't work out, I get, well, one or two things happen. Now it's a little bit different now because I'm 45. When I don't work out, I get thinner. Although my waist will get bigger, but I get thinner. And so I didn't work out. All I could do was try to like wear suits and shirts to different things, depending on what the roles are, until I healed up enough to get a workout in. I got into running. I could run. You'd have to do different things, but I couldn't do certain things. The only thing I had were my looks and my ability to recite lines.
So where did you put your reels? I know there's like an app that they have casting calls with.
Yeah, there's a couple of sites, and I learned a couple of sites. I learned them from other actors when I got my first background gig. And when you get a background gig, it's basically hurry up and wait, right? And so the big gig around DC at the time was House of Cards, which was really like Baltimore or north of Baltimore, but it's the DMV area. And all the actors would try to get work on there. And that was just good to get my feet wet. just to,
Mm.
because you can't really produce or put clips out there, but there were people who knew about these sites locally. One of them called Dragonut Connects. Another one was Backstage.
Backstage. That's what I kept thinking backlight. I'm like, that's not the word. That's not the
No, no,
word.
no.
Yeah.
I think Backlight is a different app, and I think that's
Oh.
actually for escorts.
Oh.
I think.
No, I was. It's back. No, it's.
That's
Well,
a different. That's a different app.
I'm really glad I didn't say that. No, so it's Backstage, and so you use that and you put your reels on there.
Yeah, whatever you got,
Mhm.
whatever your little resume can. And it was a little resume with me. Like, oh, I did this one man play, but I'd had these videos that were well produced, so those could actually work as clips. Although stage video does not work as well. I mean, it shows that you've done something. And one thing I've always had with me was the ability to present myself. So there'll be people who will give you opportunities that may be not necessarily directly related to acting or what have you, but you get to use certain assets, and I would do things like just to make a buck. I knew a guy from the sports bar that I would go to all the time when I had a regular paycheck. And on Sundays, I spend all my days there watching football and drinking beer. I saw on Craigslist, because I would go on Craigslist to find any gig. He's like, I need somebody to hand out flyers. And I responded to the ad. I sent a picture of me, like, no, it's me. And he's like, what, you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm handing out flyers to prospective customers just to bring people through their doors. Their business picked up. I made enough cash to keep on going, keep moving. And that's all because I had presentation. That's all because I had the ability to use my voice and speak from my diaphragm, right? And bellow out, 10 types of burgers, 8 types of pizzas, 6 types, just get people through the door. And from there, you find yourself hustling and scuffling in ways that you wouldn't if you still had your regular job. And
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
People will be like, you're doing all this just so you can make possibly half of what you made at your old corporate gig. I'm like, yeah, but my time is my own, and it gives me the flexibility to do what I need to do. Before I left Geico, before I put in my notice, I asked my bosses in my department, hey, I noticed some people work from home. Funny how that is now. A lot of people are working from home now. I know some people are working from home. I would like to work 25 hours, or maybe half a schedule or something like that. I would like to downgrade if possible. And they're like, I don't think we could do that. I'm like, okay. And I just stayed quiet. I thought about it. And then boom, turn in my resignation.
Wow, they lost someone there.
Yeah.
Being inflexible. And then now the whole world had to work from home that could, the knowledge workers.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've learned a lot and grown quite a bit being out on your own for these last 8 years. I mean, what do you think are like some of the biggest lessons that you've learned, and what ways have you grown that you wouldn't have had you stayed at Geico?
When you have to have it, it's a sink or swim moment. And it may not be like an episode of Jack Bauer on 24 or whatever. How about that for a dated reference? But it could be like a matter of either I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. But if I'm not going to do certain things, why did I take away that security blanket? And you learn a lot about yourself when you have to do something.
Right.
The sink or swim is such a cliche, but it's true. You don't know what you can do until you have to do it. Life gives you these curveballs and you find out how tough you are. And it's in that toughness. Once you move past that period of uncertainty, for me, it's like, oh, I can do anything now.
Right. Because you can trust yourself. Beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can handle what comes your way.
Yes. Yeah. My biggest motto is I'm not super Christian, but I was born Baptist. And so I know the Bible a little bit. And like 4:13 will be, I can do all things in Christ that strengthens me. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But the real verse is the one before that. And that's the one where Paul is basically saying, hey, man, I've been homeless. I've been hungry. I've been sick. I have not had anything. And yet, because I've experienced those things, I'm still here. But the point is, because you've gone through things and you're living to tell the tale of what you've gone through, well, now that should actually buck you up. It's just like muscles in your body when you work out. you break down the muscles, you wear it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have that break, that's where you get stronger. So you can take on more pressure, more work.
Right. Yeah, I think also too, so many people are afraid of not having health insurance. You know, they're afraid of what would happen if I suddenly don't have money. You know, how am I going to eat? How am I going to
Mhm.
survive? And then to get there and realize, okay, all that happened and I'm still here. I survived. Suddenly that fear goes away because you know you can handle it, that you're going to be
And
fine.
yes, and Deidre, another metaphor, which is my life. My body is my life. The first time I had surgery, I was impoverished. I was about to go home and live with my mom
Mm.
in Georgia.
And
And
how old were you at that point in time?
38, I had my first surgery the day after my 38th birthday.
Mm.
First of all, I cried because it's like, well, crap, they're going to put me on there and they're going to go into my spine to do this surgery. And the reason I had the hand issues in the first place, the spinal issues in the first place, was from a bus accident 20 years prior. I
Oof.
was on a I was a passenger on a bus. I was the only passenger on a bus, an inner city bus from Durham, North Carolina to Chapel Hill. And the bus flipped over and I've tumbled over with it and I hit my head on something. And they were like, everything seems cool now. Everything seems fine. Of course, chronic things happen after that. I had spinal issues. And those spinal issues didn't show up until months after I leave my job, which is
Mm.
hilarious. But that
Mhm.
first surgery, I was so to speak assed out. I was in trouble. I had no money. I had debts. I was doing all sorts of shady things to try to keep my apartment in DC because something told me if I go back to Georgia, I'm going to live a very unimpressive, unhappy life in Macon. I would have to
Mhm.
start completely over. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to do that. I felt like there was something for me still in DC. Well, I stuck with it, survived some kind of way. I slept on people's sofas. I healed. I got better. And then 4 years after that, I had to have a second surgery because the
Mm.
issue returned again, but with different nerves this time. This time they go through the back of my spine instead of the front. And I wasn't in as bad of shape because I had endured the first surgery where I'm working for myself, meaning I'm hand to mouth and I don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. Second time around, okay, I'm doing a little bit better. I have a few more resources than I thought I had. And then you have my surgery that I had May 4th, the third surgery. And it's like, well, crap. I can host this. I can do that. I can still
Mhm.
work. I have friends who were basically taking bets how long I was going to stay up here in DC. Like, you're not going to
Mhm.
last. And I had a neighbor who's like, yeah, you're about to get weird. I knew that I wouldn't have girlfriends. I'm like, I can't afford dates. Are you kidding me? I'm struggling just to pay rent. I can't do this or that. I sold my car. When you let go of certain things that you're worried about other people scrutinizing you for,
Uh-huh.
you are completely liberated. You're free
Mhm.
to be what you want to be.
Mhm.
And I made this life what I want it to be. And this is the life I've always wanted. And I wish I had done it 5 years earlier, 10
Mm.
years earlier.
Yeah. Well, it's that line from Fight Club. The things that you own begin to own you. So giving up your car, so what? You live in DC. Like, what do you really need a car for?
Right. I was gonna say the line from Fight Club was "ow," it hurt, but it I didn't need I didn't need that. I didn't need that truck in DC. It was more trouble than it's worth. But
Mhm.
yeah, everything works out the way it's supposed to if you just have some conviction and try to be in tune with what feels like this is the right path, right? So many things I've
Yeah.
done have led to bigger and better things. So I've acted, I've been on a reality show, I've written a book, I've written some plays. I got into a playwriting fellowship at Arena Stage here in DC. I've done stuff.
Yeah,
So
which you also wouldn't have done had you stayed there. I mean, I
no,
think. But people
you wouldn't have
always
the
say,
time or the resources. No.
right. And a lot of times people will say, well, can't you keep your corporate job and then act on the weekends? Or you could write at night when you come home from work. You could work on your book then. That way you have health insurance and a steady paycheck and you can do both. I mean, I hear that sort of reasonable talk all the time. Does that produce really good art to have your day job and then art on nights and weekends? What do you think of that?
Well, something's going to suffer because I wrote my book during the last years or two at Geico. I was still at Geico. In fact, I was so checked out of my actual work at Geico, I found myself like sneaking in, changing the screens so I could write a couple of more pages of this book while on the clock. So something's going to
Ooh.
suffer. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
something's going to suffer. And when you do things part time, you're literally just doing it part time. I tell people, unless you have to eat and sleep off of your profession, you're not in the profession. You're
Mm-hmm.
dabbling. And when you dabble in something, okay, you're a good dabbler. But until that has to be your main bread and butter, you're not doing it.
Mm.
And I was on a reality show, and the funny thing about a reality show is that they didn't know how to label me. Some reason they labeled me a journalist. I hadn't been a journalist. I hadn't written for the newspaper. Let's see. It had been 20 years since I had written for a newspaper in Durham, North Carolina. 18 years since I did column work. And I told them all the stuff that I did. Right now, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a creative. I have a business selling spices. I have a bunch of things that just let me use the side of my brain that lets me use that to its capacity. And those idiots called me a journalist. Okay. But yet everybody else who labeled themselves all sorts of things get labeled entrepreneur. Where I'm actually an entrepreneur because what I bring in sustains me. All these other people had their regular 9-to-5 jobs and they did a few things on the side. And they were saying the things that they did on the side were their main gigs.
That's frustrating.
Until you suffer for your work, suffer for your craft, it's a hobby.
Yeah. I want to talk about this reality show that you're on. I mean, many people are fascinated with reality shows. So first off, what was the name of the show?
Ready to Love on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network.
Okay. And how did you get on it?
I was approached by a casting director, casted me in a couple of events. She's not my agent or anything like that. And she said, "Hey, are you single?" I said, "Yeah." "Who's asking?" And she said, there's a dating show. It's a reality show. I'm like, "Oh, no. I want nothing to do with that." She said, "No. Listen. It's coming to DC. It's well watched. It may give you some exposure." It's exposure for what? Like, people get on those shows. What do they? That doesn't mean they have talent. So hear me out. There'll be some nice ladies. It'll be well done because it's the Oprah Network, so it won't be any shenanigans. It's on DC. It's gonna be in DC. You're single and you're handsome. You like women, right? I said, "Yes, I like women." Right. So try it out. So I put in for it. Went through a car wash of interviews and screening tests and things like that. I got cast on the show. In fact, I was the first person to be brought into the middle of the so-called process that was the Ready to Love dating show, where there are 10 singles who are women, 10 singles who are men, and they get together and they're put together for dates and scenarios until they find mates or they get voted off.
Do they really fall in love on that on shows like that? I mean, what's your take?
Not my cast.
Can you tell us any juicy bits, or were you sworn to secrecy?
I'm not sworn to anything now, especially now that my contract is well over. I would say I think some people find themselves infatuated with each other for the most part because they're in this incubator that's promoting them to like each other. And
are you allowed to leave? Are you on like a camp? Like, are you on this little controlled campus?
It wasn't a controlled campus, but COVID did have an issue, did play a part in our season because we had to do a lot of dates outside or we were quartered off from a lot of other people because we had to try to be secure and have a secure set. It's actually way more controlled. That's a good question. It's way more controlled, at least this show was, than I thought it would be. I thought they would have some interviews with some friends of mine. I thought it would be that they would follow me doing my work activities a little bit more. I thought there'd be more biography. Instead, it was more like, "Hey, you got a date." They set you up on a date. They don't tell you who you're dating, which is the funny thing about the show. The show, it's really a situation where you've seen people, but it may be a blind date situation.
Okay.
But when you get on the show, they tell you, "Hey, this is your date." So you say, "I wanted to talk to you about," so they produce you a little bit. I'm like, "But it's not my date. I never met this person. I didn't ask." "Hey, shut up. It's your date." "Oh, okay. It's my date."
Okay.
It's my date, dude.
And they tell you what to say? They tell you what to ask on the date?
They don't tell you what to say. some people can be influenced or produced to say
Mm.
things that the producers want addressed, right?
Because they think
So
it'll be more entertaining. Is that
yeah,
what
yeah.
they're
So they
doing?
may have
Okay.
already looked. They may have already picked up some footage of some things that were said in previous days or what have you, and they're like, "Whoa, that's something that needs to be played up a little bit." So a producer might drop a bug in your ear and say, "You need to ask or find out blah 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 blah." Okay. Well, they would do that with me too. However, if it wasn't something I was interested in, I didn't necessarily like ask what they wanted to ask, or I would ask it, but then I'll move on to other things because I'm like, look, this I'm trying to control this date. I'm trying to control who I'm interested in and how I approach them. I'm not just going to say stuff that I'm not really interested in.
Hold
And
on.
so,
So you were actually trying to make it a real, like, real date, and they're like, "No, this is a reality show.
so
This
that's the funny thing, Deidre. So let's
it's
get God's honest
scripted."
truth. It's not scripted. There's no script. No one gets any paper in front of them or whatever. But they
Uh-huh.
can put. But all you have to do is like wind up those little toy things. You know, the drummer board with the
Uh-huh.
cymbals and all that. But all you have to do is wind up people a little bit who most people have not had the experience of being in front of the camera, right?
Mm.
And they feel
Mhm.
like, well, this will make them happy. So, and it's kind of innocent too. This will make them happy. So I will give them what they want.
Mm.
Well, the more I thought about it, the more it's like the more I give them what they're asking of me, the more I give them what they want, the less I'm getting what I want out of this.
Did you
And
really go in there thinking you would find love?
I went in there saying, why not use the resources of a national TV show and see what they produce?
Okay.
You know, I mean,
All
sure,
right.
why not? Like,
Yeah.
I've dated some pretty highfalutin women here in DC, and they've been great for the most part. But I was curious what they would produce. Like, all right, let me see. I'm on this joint
Uh-huh.
just like everybody else. Let me see. That's what I'll say about
So
that.
were you impressed with the lineup of 10 possible women that you could have dated?
Well, being that I was introduced in the middle of the show along with my female counterpart castmate Sydney, we were brought in the middle of the show at a pool party as a
Uh-huh.
surprise. You know, I had
Oh.
my shirt open, in some green. I think they were green swim trunks, and I walk out there and
Oh, hold on. Did they
and
dress you? Did they tell you to go out there with your shirt open? Did they tell you to
let
do
me
that?
let me tell you. All right, so the whole thing about the wardrobe too, it's still TV. So they
Yeah.
told me, hey, we will help you with clothes or whatever. We'll bring a costumer to go through your closet to see what type of stuff you need. Well, they hardly liked any of the things I had. They wouldn't let you have patterns because TV doesn't like patterns.
Right.
Although this, I think the camera likes this pattern. They wouldn't let you have, crazy stripes or anything like that. No logos. Those things did not pay for it. There's a lot of clearances that are involved. So they would
Yeah.
say, hey, if you want, I could go out and buy you some things. Great. When they say I could go out and buy you some things, they literally mean give me your credit card. I'll go out and buy you some stuff. Well,
Mm.
like you're not buying anything at all. So that kind of upset me. But we had to get approvals for things we had to wear. They wanted me to take off my little green button-down shirt, which was open. They wanted me
Uh-huh.
to just be out there without a shirt, showing pecs and abs and stuff. And I had worked out. I looked pretty good. This was in
Uh-huh.
2020. This is 2021. I looked great, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to do that. I said, let me keep the shirt. And so my
Mhm.
shirt was flying in the wind, and I'm walking out there. So they sort of influenced that. Did I like the women? I did like some of the women.
Mhm.
I can't say I liked all of the women off the jump. And so I had my little small cluster of potential candidates that I would start investigating and probing from there.
Mhm. And then what happened? You weren't on the show very long?
I was on the show for 4 episodes.
Okay.
And
And in the
I
reality TV show world, is 4 episodes good, bad? Like what?
I think that's fair. I mean,
Is it? Okay.
being I was brought into the middle of the show, you would think that I would have lasted longer.
Mm.
As the twist, the person to shake things up.
Yeah,
But
you're the plot twist.
on the plot twist. But there were so many shenanigans going on with the other cast playing. I still say it was just highfalutin checkers. Some castmates were playing checkers and trying to position themselves to get to the end of the show as if there was $1 million check. It's the other
Uh-huh.
thing. There was no money involved. Like you get a
Nothing.
stipend.
They're just like, go out there
There's,
and date,
no,
and we're gonna follow you
yeah,
around and say
yeah,
the following things. And
yeah, you get a stipend, but there's no super big time check. Now you get recognition and maybe some opportunities come after that. But I lost
uh-huh.
money because we had to be like quarantined or we had to have our schedules open during the weeks
Mm.
that we were on. We were available. We had to be available.
Oh, so you had to turn down work
I
to
had
be
to turn
available for them.
down work. I had
Yeah,
to
I
turn
see.
down work, Deidre. And if you give me 2 minutes, I'll give you something that really encapsulates my life in a nutshell with this experience. So I met one woman and we went on a date. It was Sabrina. We went on a date, and then I can count it. Not 9, but 12, less than 12 hours, 10 hours later, I'm meeting all her friends. They stick me in a room and all of her friends are there, and her friends have been coached up to like really grill me about something goofy that I said. And it wasn't even goofy. I said, hey, I like how we're vibing. I like you. But I'm still not sure if I'm done with trying to have children or not. And you're a single mother and you're my age, you're in the 40s. Is that a possibility? She's like, I'm done. I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go down a road and we like each other and then I break your heart later.
Mm.
I thought that was a very adult thing to say.
Yeah.
So they grilled me on this in the most reality TV stupid ass way the next day. And because of that, I'm like, you know what? This is getting stupid. And I want
Mm-hmm.
out. And I told another castmate who I did kind of like, but I'm like, I don't trust this process. And I talked to a producer and I said, I don't think the woman I want is here.
Mm.
And it's mostly because I don't trust you guys or this process. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you guys are trying to throw. Like, hey, you sure you don't want to stick around? I thought you liked such and such. I was like, yeah, I like this. But after that crap that happened for a woman I just met 11 hours ago and to have her friends chastise me as a provider, if I'm a provider or not. First of all, who the hell are you? Secondly, where I come from, you should ask people who you are. Tell us about you and your family, where you come from and what school you ask regular questions. You don't get manipulated by the cameras like that. So it was a very ugly, stupid A experience for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I left. When I got eliminated, so I pretty much kind of like said I tapped out. Because I know somebody else was actually voted by the women to be eliminated before me. But they didn't eliminate him because I said I'm not interested.
I
And
see.
so when
Okay.
when I got eliminated, 4 days later, I was on the set of HBO's We Own the City.
Nice. Now, did you get that gig because you had this
No,
reality show?
reality had
No.
nothing to do with that.
Did you get
Reality had nothing to
anything
do with
from
that
the
shit.
reality show? Did that help? Did it open up any doors for you?
Some opportunities have come my way, nothing major, but most of everything I've done, Deidre, has been because of what I've already laid foundations for.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is if you could do another reality show, would you do it? Because I know a lot of people fantasize about being on reality shows because they've watched so many of them. And I just wonder, would you do it again after your experience?
I think it depends on which show,
Mm.
or if this one would be done a little bit differently, because I don't think you have to gin up drama when you have people in their 30s and 40s trying to find somebody. I
There's
think there's
already
enough
drama.
drama and tension if you just keep them in a room together. That was the other thing. I was kind of surprised that the cast didn't hang out a lot on
Uh-huh.
camera. They didn't set up a lot of situations. Now the cast after my cast had more opportunities to sort of be together, and you get a group dynamic, which makes it more interesting. Instead, it was just so sit down and have a date. And then they brought me in, and there were other people who had fun dates like bowling or
Uh-huh.
I think axe throwing was a date, or working
Uh-huh.
out. My dates were always, let's sit down and have a meal together. So, young lady, tell me about you. Like, what the heck? I want to shoot some pool. Let's do karaoke. Why am I
Uh-huh.
siloed to this? Yes, dear, I understand. Yeah, so no. I'll tell you another
Yeah.
thing too.
Okay.
Somebody also thought that I was a little too bookish for the show.
Bookish.
Yeah,
It's because you're a journalist.
I just use a lot of words.
No, it's because they said you were a journalist. It was a throwback to your so-called occupation that they gave you.
Yeah,
I
whatever.
I wonder if they didn't say you were a journalist, if they said, he's a mechanic, like would they have said you're too bookish?
Yeah, they wouldn't have said bookish at all. No, they
Yeah,
wouldn't have said any of
at
that.
all.
No.
They're like, he's a really smart mechanic. Just left it alone. I think back to you leaving Geico, and there's so many people that absolutely can't stand their jobs wherever they are. And do you have any advice for someone who just wants to say, take this job and shove it? Like, what sort of advice would you give them?
I would tell them to have a game plan. I did not. but
so if you
but
could go back in time, would you have, like, if you could, I realize you don't want to change anything, but there might be little tweaks. Like, would you go back in time and maybe put together a little bit of plan first and then go? Is that what you're saying?
I reckon so, but you don't know things until you know you don't know them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like you sort of have to go through things before you really get the gist of what you're fighting for. It took me a while. It's sort of like a freshman going into college without a major, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of just wandering around. Well, maybe I like that. Maybe I like that. And I needed that. Some people don't need that. I needed that wandering period to say, okay, this is what I don't want. Maybe this is closer to what I want. And I don't think I would have gotten that had I just made a regimented plan, because frankly, that would have stifled the freedom that I sought in the first place to pursue whatever my dreams were. So you're gonna
yeah, it's interesting. Your advice is to other people to have a plan.
No. My advice isn't to have a plan. My advice to people is to give yourself the freedom to find a plan.
Okay, there we go.
I that's what worked for me. I don't think every lid fits every pot though. So it's more or less like a matter of you got to do what works for you. For me, like I look back, the only thing I would have done differently, I would have done it sooner. I would have left sooner. I would have had the courage of my talent and my curiosities, and I would have gone there with my talent and curiosities and just explored the world. Now I do things like host speed dating events. I'm on reality TV shows. I do voiceovers. I'm in a bunch of commercials. I did a vaccine Super Bowl commercial. I was on HBO. I arrested a kid and beat him up to good effect too.
On the show. You didn't do that in person.
On the show. No, not in real life. No.
Like, and these are all the things I did. Let's talk about that speed dating. You're out there hosting these speed dating events. How's dating change? Like, how's it changing?
The funny thing is, like, when I host speed dating events, people have become prisoners to this, right?
Their cell phone. Yeah.
Their selfies so we only can gauge people off of the image that they keep showing us. If I see another woman use a bunch of filters on her regular picture, or take another photo where the camera is like arm's length above her, so we have no idea. All we see is her décolletage. We have no idea how big or small she is down there. Or people just being internet superstars. And that's how a lot of people are dating. They go to Bumble, they go to Hinge, they go to Match, they go to Facebook. People are finding it easier to communicate with people without being in person. So they get to speed dating events, and they're like, it's actually refreshing to talk to someone in person. I've hosted, Deedre, about 400 speed dating or networking events.
What? That's a lot.
Over the past 5 years, I've been doing it.
What do you think dating is going to be like 10 years from now?
Here's the thing. Society has found a way for us to entertain ourselves without engaging with people.
Yes.
We have our own phones and tablets. So we don't even have to watch TV with mom and dad, sister and brother. We don't even have to watch the shows when they air. We watch them when we want to watch them. Same thing. We can have, so many times I get to a bar, everyone's got their phones out, and most people are on their phones or having conversations with the person on their phone or texting instead of talking to people at the bar. It's a social establishment. And so we're just going to find more ways to be isolated, but need something. We'll have hologram dating. we'll have it to the point where people will boil it down to a checklist like they think they're doing now with some of these social media sites. And I don't know, think that they could pick up a pack of Guy at the Walmart or, or a 6-pack of Chick at the Family Dollar or what have you. Like that's how we're treating dating. The funny thing is
like
that
a commodity.
Like a commodity, but we learn late because we're still humans and we bleed. oh my God, we do like interaction. We do like touching. That's why speed
Mm-hmm.
dating still exists. I thought it was over within the 80s and 90s. I'm like, speed dating
Yeah.
is a thing? Like, no, it still happens. And this company that
Mm-hmm.
I often do speed dating events for, they're in 4 continents. Four
Wow.
continents. Sydney and Melbourne and Sao Paulo and London and New York and Toronto and DC. Like, oh, and I'm one of these people who host these events because people still want interaction.
Do you get the same people over and over again coming to the events?
I do. I do sometimes. Mostly the
Mm-hmm.
guys. The guys are like, this is a great deal. I'm going to get to talk to these amount of women. A lot of the women are like, I did it one time. I tried it. Wasn't for me. Get out of here.
Huh.
But I have seen a couple of women who are repeat patrons.
They're more single people than like ever before. And here we have this ability to connect with more people than ever before. And yet the true connections aren't happening.
People have one of the most powerful inventions of the last half of the 20th century in their hands, and they use it to
Mm-hmm.
make stupid selfies and memes or put dog ears on their photos. Excuse me, I live next to a fire station.
That's right. There was a funeral home in town that was for sale, and I wanted to buy it and turn it into a bar where you walk in and you have to check your cell phone in a like locked cubicle that will, you get the key and then it's charging. It's like a little charging station there. And then you go in. And I wanted to call it the embalming room where boredom goes to die, but you're just not allowed to bring your cell phone beyond the entrance. You just got to check it just like you would check a coat or whatever, and just to force people to talk that way. And I don't know if they'd be able to do it.
Other than Halloween, who's going to this bar and why?
People that
embalming
really just
room?
want to talk. Yeah, the embalming room. Yeah.
Would you go to a place called the embalming room?
Well, obviously it's in my head. So yes, I would at least try it out. And if it was decorated in a cool way, I mean, you got lots of little rooms in those places that you would have more, I would say, intimate conversations or what have you. Really good cocktails. Yeah.
I don't know. I
mean,
can't see
they've done.
taking a date there either. Hey, babe, we're going to this place, the embalming room. It used to be a funeral home. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
And she get on her phone. This crazy such and such.
Well,
Pick me
they were
up.
saying, no, I saw the speaker years ago. This was years ago. And she was saying that when people have their cell phone out, even if they put it face down on the table in front of everyone, that no one really dives deep into a conversation because they know at any given time that cell phone is going to interrupt. And because the cell phone's going to interrupt everybody, they just won't let loose. They won't relax and allow that to happen. So you really do need to find a way to remove the device and actually put it out of sight, gone, so that people can focus on the person in front of them.
Well, even further, I think that's why we have a huge amount of society that wants to share everything, because we're having so many surface physical conversations, in-person conversations, that it's sort of like Vesuvius, like, oh, thank God, I just get to share everything. I share what I eat. I share where I'm going. I share what I'm wearing tonight. I'm sharing, let me tell you about this last date. And they're just talking to complete strangers, just out in the void, just talking, or you could have a date, and before you know it, that date will just start blabbing once you have his or her attention about all this stuff. Like, people don't know how to pace the way they share information, because we know that we're having we're always having surface conversations, especially DC. DC is a resume town. So it talks about, it's like, all right, who you work for, especially with Capitol Hill.
Know?
Are you on the Hill? Who do you know?
Yeah.
Which is completely the opposite of the type of conversations I grew up with from Georgia. It's like, all right, who your folks? What church you go to? These may seem like some Mayberry type questions, but they actually scratch the surface a little bit more, and people may be a little bit more nosy about you, but we're going to learn more in that conversation than in some of these professional settings. And I think, unfortunately, dating is still about presenting to people who don't matter. And I don't mean the person you're trying to date. I mean, it's the perception that, you know what, I don't need a man. Oh, shoot, I ain't worried about these women. see all this fun I'm having without X, Y, and Z. You see me
Mm-hmm.
doing this and that, as if this doesn't matter. We're so afraid to be, or we're afraid that we're going to seem vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And being human is the good type of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that's important. And that's why we got to have these conversations so we can be human to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are trying to take the humanity out of being human. And I think that's where dating is going, unfortunately, because it's all about impressions that you don't need people when you do.
Well, it sounds like you have the ability with all of these people you're interacting with to change that.
Nah.
I mean, you could. Yeah. I see a lot of your posts. You tend to critique movies and shows and music that's come out. Are there any movies that have surprised you recently?
You mean in a good way, I guess.
It could be good or bad. Just you watched it and you go, wow, I did not see that coming, because it seems
Well,
like a lot of movies are so predictable. At least for me, that's what I feel like.
I think a lot of the pandemic just produced a lot of terrible stuff, but because we were shut in for that early period,
Uh-huh.
people wanted to say they liked it because they spent their time on it, like Coming to America or something like that. But I was really surprised, genuinely, that I liked Hamilton. Because like, oh, this is cheesy. It's gonna be cheesy. I'm a
Mhm.
history person. This is gonna be so trite and so new age and hip. It was all those things, but it was also very good. I enjoyed it. I was surprised
Mhm.
that I enjoyed it. I know there's some political ramifications that some people have out there, like, well, this, Alexander Hamilton may or may not have owned slaves, and so while
Mhm.
we celebrating white colonialism, well, for the sake of history, though, this guy's a historical person, and this is a story that man wanted to tell in the way he wanted to tell it, and
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. And sometimes we have to leave it at that. And if you don't like this person being portrayed, then you create and portray somebody else. Like there was even
Sure.
something going on, like again, not to get too much in the weeds, but I have to get into it, like In the Heights, and people were getting on Lin-Manuel Miranda, like, well, there were no black people in Washington Heights. Yeah, of course there were black people in Washington Heights, but in reality, people congregate, talk to, chat, and be open with people that they want to be with. And most of
Mm.
the time, that's people who look and act like themselves. Black people do it. I don't see many black people walking to every white person saying, let me be your friend. White people certainly do it. Church is something that you feel comfortable in. And Dr. King said church is the most segregated hour on earth. So why are we getting on Lin-Manuel Miranda for a damn show where there's a bunch of people who look and act just like him? Woody Allen lived in Manhattan, and there was not a damn black person in any of those Woody Allen movies. And I'm okay with that, because I don't know too many black people saying, hey, where is the pedophiliac Jew that I can talk to? And they didn't do it. And so everyone needs to shut the hell up and let people do what they're going to do with their storytelling. That's coming from a writer. Had to get that
All
one out.
right. Okay. Did you say you want me to edit that out?
No. I don't. That's actually on brand, and that's fine.
That's very much on brand. It's very spicy. Speaking of spices, how did you get into selling spices? How did that even happen?
Just like everything else, Craigslist has saved my life. Craigslist has sustained me. And there's a lot of things that are on Craigslist. I didn't think that this was a real thing. So speed dating, I got that gig through Craigslist. I got a modeling gig through Craigslist. I got a gig emceeing bands who perform chamber music and orchestra music on a national level at contests, festivals. I got that on Craigslist.
Really?
I judged a debate competition during Memorial Day weekend on Craigslist. And so my other friends were like, how the hell are you getting it? I said, well, I'm not just an actor. I do other things, and these things appeal to me, and I know how to pattern my application to people saying, I think you could do this. And so there was a gig where this guy said, I have a blended spice business, and we go to expos across the country, and I need someone to help one of my salespersons sell these spices. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? And the spices are used with a cup of mayonnaise and a cup of sour cream, and you turn them into dips, and people would taste the dips with pretzel sticks, and they eat them and they go crazy. Now you can use them for other things. You use them to season other foods or what have you, but mostly people like dips. I knew how to sell them. again, other things I've done in my life build to this experience. So I had been working the flyers, right, for the sports bar. Hey, 10 types of burgers, 8 types of pizzas, 6 types of tacos, blah, blah, blah. And I was just talking to anyone who'll stop to talk to me.
Uh-huh.
I start to use that same type of spiel and enthusiasm in selling these spices. And the guy goes and reports back to the owner of the spice business like, this dude is phenomenal. He's a machine. He won't stop. And he's really selling. Like, he's great. I just thought I was just doing my job. And because I was so good, the guy was like, hey, do you want to run one of these spice businesses for me every now and then, find a show? Okay, I do it. The returns are great. I hand him his money, and he pays me my share. Well, not really my share, but just pays me my wage for the weekends after I start doing that. Then the pandemic hits, and he's like, well, those spices are just sitting there in the warehouse. Would you want to take them off of me? And you just order from me. You just own the business. And now I own my own blended spice above franchise, so to speak. And anytime things get slow, I find expos and I sell them that way. And I'm looking to try to repackage them and market them, my liking, but it works. And it's another entrepreneurial endeavor that I have in my back pocket that I often play in my front pocket. So, but that's also brick building. If I didn't work the sports bar gigs, moving the flyers, I wouldn't have gotten the gigs selling spices, which wouldn't have gotten me to the point where I own and I order. Let's see, my last gig was 2 months ago, and I ordered, about $2,000 worth of product, moved about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of stuff.
That's great. That's great. I've handed out flyers before. I didn't think it was hard. It's hard. People dodge you. They move out of the way. Like,
they try not to make eye contact.
Oh, they see you coming. They're like, oh, it's the flyer girl. And they just will not accept your flyer.
They worry about you being Greenpeace and trying to save whales or something. Or ask for a credit card. Is like, I just want to give you this information.
Oh my gosh, I did it for the symphony. It was the local symphony, and they said, let's go to this farmer's market and we'll hand out flyers to tell people about this upcoming concert. And that was it. But you would have thought I was trying to hand out boogers to people. I mean, they were just so grossed out by me. It was a very humbling experience. I think everyone should have to hand out flyers in a crowded street somewhere. They'll have a new respect for the people that do it.
Humbling is the word. It is. Humbling. What I suggested we did starting in the spring and summer times as well, he had all these bottles of water with the labels of the restaurant on them. And he just bought all these pallets of water. I'm like, well, give me a cooler. Let me give away water for free. And they'll get a menu. And before you know it, nothing but people with flyers coming off the mall, going into this sports bar with bottles of water and the menus. And it just became another sales technique.
Smart.
You're a marketing person. You know how.
Very smart. Yeah.
It's hot. It's a bottle of water. And the damn thing has a label on it. It's like, where is this? It's right behind me. Oh, okay. We'll walk. Act like they're not going to go in. Then they duck inside. Like, I got them. So.
Nice. Very smart. I love that. How do you block your time? How do you block out distractions so that you can actually write and create? Because that's so hard. And in today's world, everything's on fire all the time. There's this steady stream of news that's terrible. And, you got all these alerts popping up on your phone. And then you have all of these projects that you're working on. How do you have some quiet to actually create?
Yeah, the greatest thing in the world is that CNN, with their new president, Chris Licht, who used to be executive producer of the Colbert Show, removed the breaking news banner. He said it can only be used if there's actual news breaking. Everything can't be a 5-alarm fire, right? My thing is, once I figure out what it is I need to do, I'm going to focus and do it. Now, where I fail sometimes is that I focus really late. Dang, I should have just actually studied starting last week for this exam. When you're in school and you had an exam, like, I really could have absorbed this. This ain't as bad as I thought it was. You're just resisting it for the sake of resisting it. What I've learned in all things, be it actual physical pain or something mental or determinative that I need to do, is to just suck it up and do it. I went to the gym for the 3rd straight day today. I had gotten into a rhythm of not being consistent, but I forced myself to the gym. I wrote a play during the shutdown, and now I'm in talks to try to get it produced. I can't go into more detail about it, but I wrote a play
But
during the
that's
shutdown.
exciting. Yeah.
It is. But I wrote that play. This is also the other thing, like I said, like by writers, you don't know if anyone's going to read this or see this or want to. It's the Emily Dickinson syndrome, right? Oh, you wrote all this great stuff. They'll find it when you're dead. But but you do it anyway. And I got so enthralled and I rolled up my sleeves. I was into the material. It's like, no, I'm going to finish this. And often I become a crazy person or a driven person. And my dietary habits are kind of suffering. My sleep patterns are off because I'm going to finish this thing, particularly if it's a writing thing. And I wrote that play in about 2.5 weeks.
Do you give yourself, like, how do you give yourself dates? I mean, if you know that the only one holding you accountable is you, how do you hold yourself accountable?
You do it by remembering that because you didn't hold yourself accountable, you lost. So that means you have to lose. You have to lose sometimes. And that's where you get better, when you lose.
You're out there doing all of these commercials and, you know, movies and all that, and you have to memorize lines. How do you remember lines? What's your technique?
Most of the time I don't.
So, because I read somewhere that like Johnny Depp has a little microphone in his ear, and his assistant reads all of his lines to him, and he can do that because he's famous and he's allowed and all that. Does everyone get that?
When Johnny was broke down at the lowest point, the nadir of, how about that for a word, the nadir of his life and his addictions, he had the earpiece in his ear, just to keep him moving along. And they did the same thing with Bruce Willis, because Bruce Willis, as we now know, he suffers from aphasia. We were like, man, Bruce Willis is really not, he's really phoning in this performance. Yes, he literally is. And we didn't know that at the time. He didn't smirk a lot, but he smirked a lot. He didn't do anything. He had soulless performances. So the memorization of lines, here's the thing: when you are a B or C list, or put it this way, a working actor. I'm a working actor. Sometimes you learn how to digest and learn that information as you go along, because you're doing so many other things. You can't just read the script and breathe and marinate on it for weeks at a time before you actually have audition, because you have other things to do.
Yeah, well, and you don't have a lot of notice sometimes. It's like you're going to go to a audition, right? And you hear the lines, you need to know them.
Most time in auditions, you don't have to know the lines, but I do a little cheat, and it'll seem like I know the lines. I'll have my teleprompter working, and I can still see myself on the screen, and I'll do it on my iPad that way. Through that's a little tip for you kids, because if you're reading this like this, well, guess what they don't see? Your face.
Yeah,
so
and your eyes.
At the camera, you have the eyes and all that stuff. That's one thing. But the second thing is, I put his case in point. I flew down to Tampa last week for a gig for Marriott Corporate, and I got the script on the Friday before the 4th of July. I flew down on Tuesday to do a shoot on Wednesday. And when I say this is the most dense, indecipherable text I've ever seen or read, I say that. The first day, I'm like, I'm going to get these words down. I do whatever I can to get the words down. The second day, you have to be honest and say, I'm going to have to power through it, because I only had so many days to get this. The thing is, they knew that they gave me a bunch of crap. So we worked some things out. I was able to digest it in bites, and the director was really cool, and they said they loved my performance. So whatever, great. But the point is, point is, sometimes you're not going to be able to always do that, but that comes with the job if you're a working artist. You just have to. Do
you record yourself and listen to yourself? Does that help you?
Sometimes. But what I'm learning now is that highlighting it, maybe typing out the text. When you type out the text, you remember the words when you bang them out a little bit more. And then rinse, wash, repeat. Say them over and over and over again. And
do you ever handwrite them on flashcards or index cards or anything like that?
I don't have the patience for that. I rather text them to myself or something. But you know, that's little mechanisms. But you get through it. You work and you get through it. Could I say something about that Tampa trip?
Yeah.
I last year I made preparations. Like, I don't like credit cards, but I got a credit card with an airline. They gave me like 60,000 miles, right? And every time you use a credit card, you build more miles. And I said, what's smart to me is that I can get my foot in the door and show these people what I can do, depending on whatever gig is available. And I'm not going to let the fact that I'm in a different time zone or area code stop me from getting a certain job. The job may pay well. I just need to be there. You know, where so many people want companies to pay for them to fly out. I took the agency to say, I need resources so I can fly out on my own accord and my own dime so I can get these gigs. And that's what happened with me in Tampa for the Marriott Corporation. They're like, well, we're Marriott. We can get you a hotel. If you're willing to fly here, we'll love to have you. And so I was willing to fly there because I had the resources to do it. And that's planning ahead. You can't expect people to patronize your ambitions. You must.
I love that line.
You must patronize your ambitions. You must be the go-getter. We are in a procrastinative society.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we are procrastinative is that we think that just because we exist, therefore we are. We are not. No one knows who the hell you are or what you can do. They can only know that until you show them. And when you show them, then they might work with you. But even then, they might be restricted in their ability to bring you on board for something or give you a break unless you meet them halfway. People have budgets. They can't always blow it up for this kid who says that they'll fly down. What if you don't fly down? What if you don't have the credibility? What if you don't have the resume that backs up your dependability? Now they're asked out of talent. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at things from other people's perspective. No one is Professor Xavier or Jean Grey reading your mind and your soul and spirit to see how valuable you are to them. Mm-hmm. You have to show them. And even when you show them, you have to be willing to patronize your own instead of other people doing it for you. And when you get somewhere and when you make these moves and when you get those jobs and you do great work, now people are like, oh, I've seen your work. That's your resume. I will gladly bring you aboard. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason for anyone to trust anybody, you know, and so many kids now, I exist, so I'm fly. You don't know how fly I am. You hadn't been on a stage the first. You hadn't rapped any bars. You hadn't sung in any American Idols. You ain't done nothing. You're just you. You haven't been paid for anything. Therefore, you're not professional. But yet you want all of this stuff given to you. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem on a generational level that I do see. You got to be willing to patronize your own ambitions.
Is standing out good or bad in that industry? And you used to have a little gap in between your two front teeth.
I used to have a big gap.
And come on, I was trying to be nice. So
it's smaller.
Yeah. So, you had a little gap in between your two front teeth and it bothered you. And you decided you were going to go out and you got aligners or something. Yeah. And you got it fixed. I'm going to put in air quotes. You got it fixed. You didn't have that gap anymore. But is that a unique characteristic that gave you a leg up? Like, are you getting more gigs now because you fixed that gap? There's a lot of pressure for all of us to look the same. And I've always wondered.
No. Yeah. Like, so what I could have done, like so many other people do, is get their teeth bonded or get veneers and have this overbite to where as soon as they open up their mouth, all you see are their teeth and they're smiling. I didn't want
like
that.
chiclets.
Yeah. These are my teeth. And I own them. I just had to straighten them a little bit. I mean, they were going different directions and they were really flaying apart. I never remember them being as far apart as they had been until I actually went to the dentist and examined the whole thing. And I went with one of the companies and online and they've been straighter. And I know for a fact I've lost gigs because of my smile. Now, I thought I had a pretty nice smile, but I never had confidence in my smile.
Did you lose gigs before with the gap or
before?
Okay. Because Jennifer Grey got that nose job and then she just completely lost all of her acting gigs.
That's because she didn't look like Jennifer Grey anymore.
That's right. She did. She completely did. So I just
like wondered, Renee Zellweger doesn't look like Renee Zellweger anymore.
I know. It's so sad when people do that.
Renee Zellweger may as well have been in Face Off Part 2. So you still got to look like who you are. And I look like who I am. I just have, in fact, my gap isn't gone. It's just the teeth are straighter. Some people said, "Hey, your gap is your thing, like Strahan." I said, "People know who Strahan is. I don't have a thing because I'm not anybody yet." So that's the other thing too. You have to be humble about your station and position. I can make it my thing, but if it's prohibiting me from getting gigs, then what good am I doing? I didn't want to do it, but that was also being lazy and cheap. And I always wanted straighter teeth because that gives you confidence. I don't mind being in people's face anymore. And like I said, my gap is not fully gone, but it works. It works.
Yeah, and you have your teeth. You didn't
They're my
get
teeth.
those right. You didn't get those veneers that look incredibly fake.
Yeah, maybe look like a phony real
Yeah.
estate agent, like when
Yeah.
Brian on Family Guy, those fake teeth that went out like piano keys.
So what's your big dream? How can people help you get there?
My big dream in general is to be a creator of things that people digest. Plays, maybe a TV show or two, not overshooting that. I think I ultimately in my 50s, I see this in my 50s, I am probably like that guy Mike Rowe who does like the dirty jobs. So he has this great voice, and he's sort of like the king of the docutainment genre, where they're really documentaries, and he's walking people through it. Like, think about it along the lines of like what Anthony Bourdain did with food, or Stanley Tucci doing now with CNN. I want to do docudramas. I want to do docu storytelling, maybe as a host and certainly as a writer, because it makes me roll up my sleeves as a historian, which is my bona fides. Yeah, that's what I want. I want people to help me get there. You can always support me, buy a book, jsdinc.com, or listen to my podcast. My regular podcast is The Shawn Show. It's at the J. Shawn Durham Inc. YouTube channel. Or listen to the actual serialized podcast, which is sort of like a Mel Brooks type of satire on politics, called The Great Recession, or How Democracy Broke Its Ass Through a Comedy of Errors. And yes, you probably have to type in all of that, but it's in 3 parts, and it's funny. I hired 10 actors through the pandemic, and we went to a studio. We had to do everything due to the COVID protocols back then, so it was a challenge. But there's music, there's sound effects, there's cliffhangers, there's actual plot, and it's a political satire. So it makes fun of a certain president, but also makes fun of people who make fun of a certain president. And I think it's worthwhile for people to watch, especially with what's going on TV that people may or may not be watching. This drama of political stuff that's happening right now. Yeah, so you can support those things. Always give me money. PayPal works. J. Shawn Durham Inc. And just keep in touch with a brother. That's all. Email me. Say hey.
All right. Well, we are going to move into the heavy pet peeve segment. And I keep thinking I need to play like barnyard animals, what have you. What are your pet peeves?
My pet peeve is that people who say regardless or irregardless, and they feel the need to point out that it's the same as irregardless or regardless. How about you just say what you're going to say, irregardless of it not being or being what you think it's supposed to mean? The Oxford comma. These are all very grammarian type of things. The Oxford comma gets on my nerves. I never liked it as a journalist, and now people are fighting for it to make a strong comeback. There may be some small sorted instances where you put that comma at the end of something after the third thing, but quite frankly, you don't need it. So cut it out.
Do you ever use Grammarly? Because Grammarly insists on the Oxford comma. Have you ever used Grammarly at all?
Now, Grammarly has not written 2,000 articles for a newspaper. back when people used newspapers. Nah, I never used Grammarly.
So I never used the Oxford comma. And what I find is anytime I run something through Grammarly to check my work, now I'm wearing reading glasses, I find I'm making some more mistakes. So I'll run things through that. And it always wants to put the Oxford comma on there. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was an editor at the New York Times, and he said that people in journalism typically hate the Oxford comma. And the reason why is they were instructed not to use the comma because it wound up saving space in the newspaper, that all those little commas add up on space. And it really was just, as the editor's choice because they needed and the publisher's choice because they wanted to save money on print. and the amount of paper used. I was like, wow, that's a lot of commas and a lot of space when it all adds up.
Well,
But
a
it was
lot of
interesting.
punctuation.
Have you ever heard that song from Vampire Weekend? Who gives a fuck about the Oxford comma?
No.
Yeah,
we don't.
I'm gonna send you. It's not like the world's best music, but I think you'll definitely appreciate it being in journalism and disliking the Oxford comma as much as you do. Any other pet peeves?
Young kids, and by young kids I mean they're young adults. They just get on my nerves. I guess it's millennials or whatever. That's such an old man thing to say, but
Millennials are old people now.
millennials
This,
are
right?
old people now. That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So
yes.
the generation before, the generation after them, they just get on my nerves. You get off on lawn.
But earlier you said you wanted kids.
Yeah, but I don't want those kids. And when you raise your kids, they end up coming out like you, whether they realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
They do the exact same thing to you? Maybe not. But it's so funny. I look at my brother and my sister's kids, my nieces and nephews, and they still hold firm to our style of people, right?
So what were you afraid of as a child? Speaking of kids.
Not fitting in.
Not fitting in? Yeah, that's a big one for a lot of people.
Well, I skipped a grade,
most
too.
people.
I skipped a grade. I skipped the second grade. I went from the first to the third grade. And so that already sets you apart because the friends that you had growing up elementary, the first part of elementary, they're basically gone. And and kids, they don't know what's going on. So they treat you a little differently. Like, oh, you think you're better than us because you're put into this different grade. I know. They just told me I should be in the third now. And that does have an effect. And you're always playing catch up. That can, looking back on it, that would dampen someone's achievement aspirations. You could be really awesome, but you could also be that kid who just wishes he was one of his friends from back then, right? You just sometimes you just want to be part of the pack. And now I'm realizing at this age, the pack isn't always good for you if you know better, if you have the acuity, if you are different than, you have to be different than because that's your gift, right?
And comfortable with it instead of feeling
comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so that's been the challenge. So the challenge has been to be comfortable with it. But as a child, I think that's always held me back to some degree. That's held me back in social circles with getting along with certain people. And look back on it, it's like, not that I've had a lot of therapy, but I've had to have a lot of self-discovery. And that's something that I would say bothered me as a kid.
We're going to move into a couple of questions from the very interesting game show. And I want to remind you, no politics, no religion, no ad nauseum topic du jour. So we're not going to talk about COVID or some of the other stuff in the news.
This isn't popular. This isn't fun at all.
And don't Google the answer. I'm looking for the most ridiculous and interesting answer. So you're just being creative. Okay.
All right.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we are traveling on a spaceship together for 1 year. What amenities should our spaceship have for us?
One amenity or just
it could
list
be whatever
amenities?
You want. You could. Yep. We're on the spaceship. And the spaceship could be as big as New York City. And it's not going to crash. We have plenty of toilet paper, plenty of fuel. All right. So what do you want on the spaceship?
I want the things that make me happy immediately. So I want chocolate, bourbon. Bourbon should be first. I want bourbon. Maybe I want chocolate bourbon. I want bourbon. I want chocolate. I want bacon. I want an iPad for me because I do want to be alone, even in space. You want to be alone sometimes. Y'all get because people probably get on your nerves. So
I'm sure.
I want my own thing.
You need your own little space.
Yeah.
Okay. Herring communicate with each other by farting. What message do you wish you could deliver with a fart?
Well, I think farts deliver quite the message, don't you? You clearly don't care about the people around you. It's not to be enjoyed by everybody. It's just something you do. My disdain is shown by farting. Like it's not, I can't wait to be respectable. So, you're not gonna let that out like that. So,
I read somewhere that farting releases antibodies. So if you smell someone else's fart, it's toxic. And so there'll be this antibiotic, not an antibiotic, your body will release some antibodies. All right. And some scientists were thinking that if you're around a particular gassy person or have a gassy partner in your life, they could be saving your life because your body's cleaning up potential cancer that is growing in your body because you're smelling these farts.
No. The message I would deliver is the one that you deliver when you fart. Get lost.
Get lost. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, here we go. Snakes can swallow things larger than their heads because they have flexible jaws. What do you wish was extra flexible, and what would you do with that ability?
Extra flexible.
I asked.
What? Well, you asked what?
I was going to give you an example. I asked this question earlier today, and someone said their calendar. Like, they decided not to even talk about their body. They're like, I just wish my calendar was more flexible, and then I could pause my work day, go do a bunch of stuff, and come back, and no one's the wiser because my calendar was flexible. I'm like, oh, look at you.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I was impressed. Like, check that out. Everyone sticks with some part of their body.
Yeah, I'm pretty agile, so I'm not about the body part thing. But I would think I would like. Well, I broke a pair of glasses last week, so I wish they were more flexible. But that's kind of mundane.
Oh, that's all right. That can be your answer. I mean, I have other questions. I can.
Yeah, that's the answer for right now.
So, the letter J is the only alphabet letter not on the periodic table. What should J stand for?
J. Shawn Durham.
I set you up. I set you up for that one. Yeah, I did. Easy. This is the official last question, which I ask in every single episode. What should have been invented by now?
An app that tells you the station you want to hear when you're driving cross country.
Oh, I like that.
And I'm dead serious. I've always wondered. It's not invented. No one does it. Mm-hmm. It's like, but you still listen to the radio. Sometimes maybe you're driving through Nebraska and you don't have cell service.
I like that a lot. Any final advice you want to give the listeners about chasing their dreams?
Quincy Jones had a tough time sleeping because he's Quincy Jones. He had a lot going on and he always felt like he had to work. So they gave him Halcyon, and the Halcyon would put him to sleep. But he stopped taking Halcyon, true story, because he said it took away his ability to dream. Anytime anything takes away your ability to dream, you need to cauterize it, cut it off, be done with it. Because if you don't dream, you will never rest until you at least pursue it. And that's what I tell people about their dreams. Don't hate them. Don't hate that you have them. Go the other direction and try to find a way to indulge them, or else you'll never rest.